Hello, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Can you all hear me and see a screen? Okay, so I'll just give an overview of whatever we will be doing. So I will give you all a break after Al-Quran and Arabic literature. Until then, yeah, we'll start with an introduction and go through contents of Jahiliyyah and then the Jahiliyyah period and the other periods of Arabic literature. And then we will move into how Al-Quran is related to the Arabic literature. Okay. All right. Okay. Then let's begin with the introduction, which is about Arabic literature and why it's called Arabic literature. How many of you are doing Arabic language also for O levels? Math. Okay, there's like a reasonable amount of you. So basically, if you know Arabic language and Arabic literature, it's going to be so much easier for you if you have a liking towards the subject. Okay. So literature in general, uh, even English literature is a little bit difficult, and some people who don't know Arabic in general, it's difficult for them. But it's not a difficult subject at all. You need to like just study whatever the words meaning. So if you just translate everything to English, it's much easier for you to understand. So the tute that I've provided, like if you have it, it has a lot of like it has entirely everything that you have to study for your O levels. Okay, so you can focus, like we have less than a month ahead, right? So we have in this book you can just study everything, keep recapping and all of that for your O levels if you are doing O levels in February. If not, you have time, but you have to still study everything. So yeah. um Basically, you know what literature is, right? It's a media. It's what a medium is something that you learn from. Like for example, even the news and all of that, it's they telecast their news for us to learn something that has happened in other countries, in even our own country sometimes, because we don't know what's happening in different parts of the country, right? So there are different forms of literature, and I'm pretty sure every one of you know the different forms because the entire book is like divided into um, poems, proverbs, stories, and just like that, speech, songs, novels, and all of that are forms of literature. And um, okay, so I wanted to tell you all that I will give you a small test at the end. It's going to be like a short answer test only. And yeah, I will post the winner on the group. And yeah, you'll have to focus really hardly, okay? And I want all of you to have like a proper intention when you're studying, because every time you have a good intention, it is always like your end result will be like perfect. So if you are doing even the like even for O levels and for non-O level students, just make sure that you have this pure intention of studying properly and for the sake of Allah. Then you will get it immediately. And whenever you start, just say Bismillah Rahmanir Rahim, and everything will be fine. Okay? So, yeah, let's begin with the history. And yeah, I will start with the contents, like I mentioned in the agenda. So, there are different parts of this is all contents of Jahiliyyah, by the way. And Jahiliyyah, you know the period, right? It was It was literally so horrible because they killed babies and they did so many other things that were like really harmful for, like they drank alcohol and they did all these very like inhuman things. That was like it just made it was this uncivilized era. So yeah. So imagine, okay, this era where people were just um they didn't have any rules. Okay? They had no rules. People think living without no rules is like so like it'll be amazing and all of that. But imagine living in an era with no rules. What do you think will happen? I want you to answer in the chat box, okay? What do you think will happen in an era where people don't have rules? I know it'll be like some of you might be, yes, crimes will increase. That's such a good answer. Shazad. Others, what do you all think? Great. Now, imagine if a person accidentally kills another person, okay? And that's out of anger, okay? This person is now dead. This out of anger, if he does it once, he'll think it's okay to do it the second time. Because out of anger, it happened, I'm going to do it like next time somebody makes me angry, I will kill them. But everybody knows that according to Islam, it's haram to take another person's life. So this person is going to feel guilty, okay? According to Islam, if you know that you killed another person, you need to seek abundance of forgiveness because you just took an innocent life away. Even though at that moment they made you angry and all of that, in the future they might do something amazing, right? They might become an influential person, or um, they might become a doctor to save lives. There are different things. You don't know what happens in in a person's life that will make that will give them a change, right? At everybody's life, at one point they have a turning point and they will change eventually. So this is something, it's which is why rules are important. And when Islam came to a people of Jahiliyyah, they were in such a state, okay? They did not know they were not illiterate, but didn't know how to read or write. But these people, they knew how to do poetry, okay? They gave more preference to poetry than prose because um poetry generally it's like heart touching, and for them, when they understand things and all of that, about life, it would be so much more like, they would understand it, and because of that understanding they would like it. So one of the poems that were heart touching was Muallakat. Okay, so Muallakat is basically what is called the suspension poems. Suspension does not mean like when a student gets suspended, but it means like when it's hung, when something is hung. So hanging poems or suspension poems. When you hang something, it just suspends in the air. So that's mu'allaqat or suspension poems. Okay, and what are the features of these suspension poems? Can anyone tell me? I just mentioned them. Yeah. Okay. So they are heart touching, and they are heart touching, and people were mostly attracted to those types of poems. Y'all can see the screen, right? Yes, correct. Okay, so just like heart-touching poems or muallaqat, there is also different other versions of poems. Okay, can you all see this contents? Okay, so these contents, they have a different Arabic names. Okay, I'm not familiar with writing them on this whiteboard, but then yeah, I'll try to write them. I'll write them in English. Okay, is that fine? All right. Um, so the first one is self-praising poem. Does anybody know what that is? I want you all to write this on your book as well. Like you'll have a book right with you, the note, sorry, the tute, or even a notebook. Y'all should learn this because this is like the first question that comes for your O levels. Like, what is this? What is the poem that is called? Yes, correct. Al-Fakhr. So write it down in your book, and you'll have to learn this. Okay, this is literally the first question, and y'all cannot mess this up because it's just 13 types of poems. So we have Al-Fakhr and then war poems. What are they called? Yes, that is called Hamasa. Okay, I'll tell you easy way to remember that. Um, all of you might be knowing like the Palestine situation, right? So they people say that people blame um Israel blames Hamas. So Hamas is basically war, like war poetry, Al Hamasa. So that is one way you can remember it. Write that down, please. What's lamentation? Lamentation is basically, so the English word means when, so for example, you faced a loss, like somebody passed away or something like that. Even for that, they will make a poem, like I miss you, whoever it is, like say, yes, something like that. Okay, that's called a rosal. And then praising poem. What is praising poem? So there is a difference, right? In self-praising and praising poem. So praising is basically how they praise the good qualities of of their tribe or a different tribe. See, one of these, like the Jahiliya, they were all not entirely bad, even though they were drinking and all of that. They did not have that much of rules. One thing they were like one of the things that they were good at is to be loyal to their tribe. So whenever like there were wars and everything, they would even leave their wives to fight in that war. For their tribe, they would do anything. That was how loyal they were. So that being loyal and keeping promises is one of the, it's like an Arab tradition where they keep promises. Whenever they say what they will do, they will ensure that they do it. So that's one thing. With regards to um it's like two good things about the people who lived during the period of Jahiliyyah. But there were also like fun fact, okay, like y'all should know this. It should be like in Islam. It should be there. There were some people who didn't enjoin in all the like the acts of Jahiliyyah. Do you all know what the names of the people is? Like, just not their names entirely, but just what those group of people were called. They were called Hanifs, okay? So basically, uh, it's like the descendants of Ibrahim alayhis salam were called Hanifs. But also the people during I obviously you all should be knowing how Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was the he falls under the lineage of Ismail alayhi salam, right? So he also belongs to the lineage of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So people at that time they were all situated in Arabia. You know how Islam was, right? You know it was it from the Zamzam well that place is where it started. Everything started over there, where Hajar alayhi salam and all they Hajar alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam they were in the desert alone. I hope you all know this story. Obviously, you all do. So, like Ibrahim alayhi salam made dua to Allah that a prophet comes from this city, like from this area. There should be a prophet because he knew this area was very like it's a Jahil area. What does Jahiliya mean again? You can send a message in the chat. Ignorance. Yes, period of ignorance. So basically, this the people of that time were also ignorant. And do you know Abu Jahl? His name wasn't even Abu Jahl. His name, literally, the name Abu Jahl means father of ignorance, which means he knows that he's an ignorant person. And he was given that name. And can you imagine somebody taking that name so proudly? So, this that was the kind of people that existed during that time. And he, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he made sure that he made dua for that area and a prophet should come from there. And that's when Allah, he commanded the last and final prophet to be born in that city. Can you imagine Allah answering Ibrahim alayhi salam's dua? And it was the final prophet. So that was how close friends they were also. Okay. So that was so basically about those people coming back to this part, yeah. Praising poem is about how they praise each other's like their good qualities and their tribe. Only their tribe. Because they were ignorant obviously of other tribes. And then um romantic poem. Basically if you know what romantic poem means. So what is that called? Are you writing it down? Okay, good. Um what is insult poem? So insult poem is how they insult the other tribes. So whatever, if there was an issue in that own tribe, obviously, you know, like how rumors spread, it will spread really fast, and they make insults with their defects. Okay, defects are like, you know, whatever their faults are, they just make defects. So like to basically to insult the other tribes. What is this called? Al-hijau. Okay. So al-hijau is insult, lamentation is al-rasau, romantic is al-ghazal, and praising is al-madah, war poetry is khamasa, and self-praising poetry is al-fakhr. Okay? Then we have descriptive poem. What is this? Good. Very good. That is al-wasf. And then we have speeches of wisdom. What is that? Good. Al hikmah. So what is hikmah mean? Hikmah it in itself means wisdom. So yeah, like you can see, like how speeches of wisdom is called hikmah. Okay. And I think just like that, Allah's one of Allah's names is Hakim, which means also the wise. So you can always connect it to things that you always to things that you know already. Okay, that way it's so much easier. And for proverbs and examples, what is that in Arabic? Al-amthal. Very good. Okay. So so al-amthal, it means examples, and I think it's there in most of the parts. Like after this, you'll know there's a lot of al-amthal, like example, or even in the hadith it's there mathalul mu'minina or something like that. That's always, and it means example. And proverbs also, like how you sometimes when you speak, you put in like proverbs, right? So if there are people, like I think your teachers might have said something like the early bird catches the worm. That is a proverb. So the person who comes early and does something, they achieve what they want to achieve. So that is one thing that you should so al amsal and mathal is, it means example. Amsal is the plural of example, which is examples. And then we have sermons and advices. What is that? This is easy. Yes, al-khitaba. So I'll give you all an easy way to learn that as well. So like after Juma prayer on Friday, uh, what happens? They will before they have, what do they have before Juma prayer on Friday? Khutbah. Yes. So before the khutbah is basically sermon or bayan, right? So the bayan, it's afterwards it's called the sorry plural of khutbah is khitaba, which is why, which is sermons and advices. Obviously, in the sermon, in the bayan, they advise people to do a lot of good and all of that. And it's also a reminder. So that all of that together is what um, khitaba means. Okay. And then we have humanistic poetry, which is somewhat similar to insult poem, because like they insult and also make it very like like to make it funny for them. Wait, humanistic is basically how genuineness and all of that. It means khawal. And then we have tardiya, which is hunt poetry, and they have khamriya. These are all three different, like it sounds the same, yeah, but then you have to keep memorizing because they have all different root words. Remember that, okay? Khamr is wine, okay? So wait, is there no wine poetry? Okay, yeah, there's no wine poetry. Um, yeah, you can cut that off and write wine poetry, khamriya. And then yeah, we have the others as well. Have you all written it? Can I get a raise of hands if you all have written everything? Okay, good. Um, I'll give you all like 2 minutes for the others to write as well. Did all of you get the tune, by the way? Okay, are you done? Great. Let's move on to the next part, which is, yeah. So Jahiliya period. As I mentioned, how they gave more importance to poetry than prose. So one reason was it was very heart touching to them than prose, because prose is just like reading off stories. How many of you like to read? Like y'all are readers. You can raise your hand. That's actually a good thing, but I'm not that much of a reader, but it's nice. Okay. Um, then we have like how Arabs, like I mentioned, they gave so much of priority to tribal pride. Like they were so interested, like, loyal to their tribes than other things. They would leave their wives for their tribes. That is basically how much of priority they gave to their tribes. And also they would have, even for the smallest of things, they would fight. Okay, there would always be some sort of war. Even when Prophet went to Medina, one of the reasons he went to Medina was because there was so much of war there. Like there was so much of war, they needed a leader. And when people found out that Prophet was there, they knew, like, even the Jews of that area, they knew that a prophet was coming, but they just don't want to accept it. Most of them, they asked for him to be their leader. That was one reason he went there, because the amount of warfare there was. Okay. So another thing was women. They gave prominence to women, but they were treated as singers, as servants, and everything else. Like, they were slaves of the people, the wealthy people. That was how women were treated. So I want you all to like properly understand the Jahiliya period. Okay. And then so one thing people say a lot these days, and I feel it too, is how this currently the modern day is slowly turning into Jahiliya. Like there's a lot of haram involved, like people take more interest and stuff like that. So all of those are Jahil, like ignorant things, and all of those happened during the Jahiliya period. And it's after Islam came, it was a regulation, and it was like um most Muslims and all were like being careful and all of that. And nowadays people say they're being more ignorant. They're not even taking that into consideration. So it's something to be careful of, because like these signs are like the signs of the day of judgment as well, right? So that was one of the things that I've recently heard about, how the modern day is becoming Jahiliya. And during Jahiliya, there were three marketplaces where poetry were displayed. So they would like, how in streets and all of that, it used to be filled with shops. Basically, in Arab countries and all of that, at those times, there wasn't like shops everywhere. If you go out of your house now, you will have a shop somewhere, at the end of your lane and stuff like that, or even like outside, right outside, you'll have a shop, right? But in uh, the Arab times, you'll have to go far away to do trade. Okay, so it used to be like that. That's also another sign where the shops become as close to your home. So it's another thing that, you have high buildings and shops and malls everywhere. And that's something that we see today, right? And then we have, yeah, the best poems were carved in gold. So these poems which were displayed in Ukkad, Majas and Majanna, they were mu'allakat poems because they were the best out of all the poems that was there. They were the best and they were hung in the Kaaba. Some of them were hung in the Kaaba, the best ones, and they were called mu'allakat. The features of this are, see, I mentioned heart-touching and strong meaning. And the famous poets who wrote mu'allakat poems were Imra al-Qais, Labid ibn Rabia, and there's so many like Amr bin Kulthum and all of that. You can um you can choose who you want to learn. So Imra al-Qais is like the most famous, but you can take I think you'll have in that in the tute and even in your books if you have a specific book, you might be having a whole list of famous poets. You can choose your like easy ones and learn them. When I learned them, a small tip was like I knew somebody with that name, so I just like connect it to that. So it made like I made sure that I know the names of the poems, like poets and all of that. Okay, and then the most famous poet was Imra Qais, and non-believers were like attracted to the Quranic literature, like Walid bin Mughira and Utbah bin Rabia. We'll come to that. Okay, so. Like I mentioned, how Jahiliyyah did not have any rules, the Islam it started bringing rules, right? It brought rules for the people so that they learn, so people were in this era of Jahiliyyah, okay, and it was difficult for most of them to like accept Islam, right? Because can you imagine so many people who are addicted to drinking alcohol and all of that? They have to change into a life of no alcohol and all of that. Obviously, they wouldn't do that immediately. People wouldn't do that. If you had to convert someone else, they wouldn't do that immediately if they were addicted. So initially in the Quran and all of that, in the Quran, basically, it was not completely prohibited. Slowly, it made it prohibited. So this person, if he was to become a Muslim, they wouldn't enforce the rules, right? So advent of Islam was basically the arrival of something great. Okay, this advent it just made sure that people were more civilized. What do you mean by civilized? Yes, they disciplined, basically disciplined. And these rules, when you think about it, every rule that the regulation that Islam puts forward, it's always a regulation that makes it protects you. Okay. And if you choose not to follow it, for example, for somebody who does not wear hijab, so if you compare it to somebody who wears hijab, they know how protected they feel when they do it because that is Islam. It's your choice to do it, and it's hijab is such a major thing for somebody to from Jahiliyyah to not to Islam to wear a hijab. If you have seen these videos about people wearing hijab in the street just for like just to see how it looks, have you come across any videos like that? Yeah, and it's so cool that they try it on because it's like it's something that when they wear it, they know how protected they feel, but most of them don't want to do it because they know about the labels that modern day has put. So like people now, they, because of this political influence and all of that, they don't do things that are simple as that, although they know it's protective. So basically these rules are for protection, and how Islam has affected the Jahiliyas. There are many um s- so yeah, now about the advent of Islam is when Prophet arrived, right? So Prophet, when he brought these regulations, a lot of wars took place, like between Muslims and non-Muslims, and there were also um, I'm just going to say NM for non-Muslims, okay? And then yeah, there were so many the praising poems and insult poems which you learned earlier. They were most important. Okay, now I want you all to keep that also in mind. Okay, the praising poems and insult poems were most important during this era of, like, during the advent of Islam. And what we can understand from this is that even during that time, Arabic literature existed. Okay, and main thing about this um okay, I'm going to display this for those who couldn't write it down. If you're done writing, let me know. Okay, you can take a screenshot. Okay, great. Yeah. So as I was saying, the advent of Islam, about the fact that there were so many people, like I mentioned about Hanifs earlier, right? Those people wouldn't follow all the, whatever they see, they don't follow. So they just, like, how simple it was for them to just drink wine and all of that, as how other people were doing it. But they were not engaging in all of those things because they know deep down that it's wrong. So that's one thing that you have to keep in mind about the inception of Islam. Okay. And there were some poets who propagated Islam. So basically, propagated means they um they tried to spread Islam through their poems. So some names that you can keep in mind are um Imam Hassan bin Sabit, not Imam, but Hassan bin Sabit, and Ka'b bin Zuhair, and there's one more. Can somebody let me know about it? Yeah, Ka'b bin Malik. So you can, because they have the same name, you can just easily remember that. Okay, you can write it like you have the tute, right? So write it in a corner. Like you can put like a note, an asterisk or something like that. Yeah, okay. Done. Then there were also there was a poem made for prophet, okay, to praise prophet. What is this poem? Does anybody know? Okay, that was made by Ka'b bin Zuhair, and it was called, yes, Banat Swad, correct. You can put a star mark there and remember that as well. Okay, is it clear? That was Advent of Islam. So I'm just gonna attach that. Um, oh no. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and then we have next we're going to learn a story that is like it's really cool. Um, because it's about a Sahabi. He was like existing during Prophet's time, but he also wanted to be a Caliph. Okay, does anybody know who I'm referring to? He was an Umayyad. Okay, so who are Umayyads? Does anybody know? So Umayyads is like um they were people, they were Muslims. They followed Islamic principles, but not that much. So they want it was started during the time of Ali radiallahu anhu, where like after like some people didn't like Ali radiallahu anhu being the fourth caliph. They wanted him to be the successor. What is a successor? Does anybody know? So a success is somebody who basically comes after um somebody else. So after Prophet, people believe that it should be Ali radiallahu anhu because he lived with Prophet, like, yes, something like the next ruler, right? So a lot of people believe that Ali radiallahu anhu should have been the successor. Like there are so many Shias around the world who are really they are annoyed with the fact that it wasn't Ali radiallahu anhu. But in the correct side, it was already, like, it was discussed. People come together, like the seniors of that time, they, after Prophet passed away, they had they had done a discussion at this place called Sakifatu Bani Saida, and they spoke to each other, and they like they knew that there were so many signs that the next caliph should be Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Just like that, at every other caliph, they had this discussion, and then they became the caliph. So obviously Ali radiallahu anh did not believe in what the people believed at that time. But then, just like I mentioned, there were caliphs, they caliphs, and also after these caliphs came, there were kings. Okay, so Malik. So just all um the first, second, and third Khulafa Rashidun, right? Just like after them, it was Umayyads. Okay, so Umayyads started this thing called Mulkiyat, or which is called hereditary system, because when, like I mentioned, how Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, he wanted to be a caliph, right? Because why did he want to be the caliph? That's the case. Because when Uthman radiallahu anhu, he was murdered, right? Do you know Uthman radiallahu anhu was murdered? Yeah. So every caliph was murdered except for Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. And yeah. So Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, he wanted to avenge the death of Uthman radiallahu anhu. And that was something, like, as Muslims, we don't do that. But he really wanted to do that because he thought that Ali radiallahu anhu hadn't done it properly. Like, he hadn't searched for the killer and given him justice. He wanted to see the justice because Uthman radiallahu anhu and Muawiyah radiallahu anhu are Umayyads. They belong to that clan. There are different tribes, right? Okay. Um, just I'm going to ask you a small question. Do you all know which tribe Prophet is from? General knowledge question. Quraysh, yes. But there's in specific. Does anybody know in specific? Okay, in specific, yes. Banu Hashim. Okay. So just like that, there are different clans. Obviously, I mentioned about them having so many wars and them being really loyal to their tribes. One of the clans were Umayyads, and Umayyads, I think Uthman radiallahu anhu and Muawiyah anha anhu, sorry. They were all cousins. They were cousins, but I'm not sure about that. But he wanted to avenge the death of Uthman radiallahu anhu, which is why he took up leadership. And after him, according to a pact he made, it should be Hussein radiallahu anhu. So, Ali radiallahu anhu's kids, right? There's Hassan and Hussein. So Hassan radiallahu anhu was this person who wanted peace and all of that. So he didn't really like fighting and war and all of that. So he didn't want to be the caliph. But he told Muawiyah radiallahu anhu in this pact that After Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, it should be Hussein radiallahu anhu. But what happened was, after Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, he knew his period was about to end, he gave his throne, like the next heir was his son, Yazid, which broke the pact. Okay, so so Yazid wasn't much like, so they did, this generation basically did not follow as much of Islamic principles. They were really, really rich. So all the caliphs, the Khulafa Rashidun, they came together for the purpose of Islam, right? But over here, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, who is the first, this is just a background story, just so that you know the story, okay? So Muawiyah radiallahu anhu was the first Umayyad caliph. And after him, it was Yazid, his son. And after Yazid, just like that, it continued. There were so many. But as I mentioned, the Umayyads, they they were not entirely following Islamic principles. But there was one person, one prominent person. His name was Umar bin Abdul Aziz. He was also one of the Umayyads. He became a revivalist. What's a revivalist? Somebody who brings up something from the past. So basically, when they did not follow Islamic principles, he became when he became caliph, he ensured that he followed Islamic principles. So he was a revivalist. So he tried to be a really good Umayyad caliph. So this period, okay, is where Jahiliyyah little bit started to increase. Like, there was little starting to be ignorant. Okay. So what you should note about this period is where slowly Jahiliyyah was starting to reroute. Okay. And then another thing about this were the Umayyad leaders, like I mentioned, they were when they took tax and all of that, normally any leader, they take tax so that they can give back to the country, like they can do some, you know, ensure to like give really good community service and all of that. But they enjoyed in entertainment and all of that, their own entertainment. Okay. And they were mostly involved in art and all of that. But there was a whole fight. I think you should be knowing the Battle of Karbala, which happened during Hassan al and Hussein Allah's time. No, Hussein al was poisoned, and then Hassan al passed away in Battle of Karbala, if I'm not mistaken. So that battle was when people of like in the Umayyad region, they didn't like his ruling, because obviously who would like a king who does not give them their needs, right? So they called Hassan al back to come and ask for ask for his leadership back. But they fought and they were killed. So one of Prophet's grandson was killed, and the other was poisoned, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, other was poisoned. It's a warning label. Okay. So things that you all have to note about Umayyads, again, a summary. Muawiyah who was the first first Umayyad Caliph. Second was Yazid, his son, Yazid bin Muawiyah. Then there was a revivalist called Umar bin Abdul Aziz. And they started rerouting the Jahiliyyah activities, such as tribal pride, tribal loyalties, and they were also arguing and all of that. And also in this time, the importance was given to Arabs in that region only. Okay, like they wouldn't care about the other regions as much. And like how already how they didn't care about their own region that much. So imagine the other regions. They didn't even have that international unity, right? And also at this time, the non-Arabs, people who were not born Arabs, so basically, like the Arab region is like the Middle East. People, the non-Arabs also, they started learning Arabic language. So as a result, they compiled Arabic grammar, which is language. And also, there were places in, Kufa and Baghdad. There were also certain places that that had debates about grammar and all of that. Okay. And there was a place called Baitul Hikmah. So Baitul Hikmah comes in the Abbasid times. Abbasid. Okay, now I have to conclude Umayyads for you. There's like a long story about Umayyads, and you learn that for A levels in detail. But Abbasids were from prophets descendants, like not descendants exactly, but after Umayyads were done, like after, like towards the end, they started weakening, obviously, like with less people's, if people do not support them that much, they start declining, right? Just like that, they started declining, and that's when the Abbasids came up, and they were like, they are prophets descendants, so they deserve the throne more, they deserve the um crown, right? So they came up, and the first person the first Abbasid caliph was somebody called Abul Abbas as-Sabah. That's just like a fact for you. I don't necessarily have to learn about that, but yeah. So this period, they had Baitul Hikmah, which is the house of wisdom. Okay, this is Abbasid period. Okay, do you all have any questions regarding Umayyads? Okay, so yeah, the Abbasids, they during that era also, they were a little bit involved with like the riches and all of that, but they had slightly more, like, some of them were ignorant, some of them were following Islamic principles like that. Mm. And they had their main source of Arabic literature was a place called Baitul Hikmah, okay, which is called House of Wisdom. It was made also by okay, this is where they got their knowledge. And yeah, Arabic dictionaries were compiled and all of that. And the poets, they had, again, poetry again. We learned about poetry last time also. And there were so many other poets. You should be having that in your tute and all of that. So just list them out there. You can choose any few and start, like, keep them in mind. Then we move on to the modern day, which is now. And this is like simple because right now there are a lot of people who, like, there are so many people from other countries like Egypt, Syria, and all of that, who learned Arabic literature, right? And in Arab countries, because they were under colonial dominance, it did not make that much of a progress, but it was to an extent progressed. Okay. Then I will come to Al Quran and its and Arabic literature, but I will start with the arguments. Okay. So Allah had mentioned in the Quran, okay, for a to people and mankind, even if both of them were together, they cannot produce a Quran. Obviously, it's like so 100% true. If you try to take that argument properly, when you recite the Quran, there's so many I don't know if you have seen, there are videos where the scientific all these scientific things that are found in the Quran itself. And there are astonishingly a lot. If you watch those, you get really, really proud of your religion. And that's an amazing thing, because even Allah asks even for people to bring at least 10 ayahs similar to the Quran, or even one surah similar to the Quran. And even though people were so, they know they can't do it, they would still talk about how the fact that um, they will say that they won't accept Islam as its religion because they don't believe for it to be true. They would call Prophet by different names like sorcerer and so many things, because they think it's magic and black magic and all of that, but they know deep down that it's the right religion. And that's where even if Prophet guides you, which is Risalah, you need Allah's hidayat to actually understand the religion and follow it. So that's we will come to the Surah Al-Abas, okay, which is about Prophet and a blind man. Okay. So can we move to surahs where Abas wa Tawalla? Surah Abas. So Surah Abbas, it talks about this blind man, okay? Now, obviously, a blind man coming and asking for Prophet's guidance. Can you imagine? Okay. Um, Obviously, at that moment, Prophet was he was trying to make sure that the other the leaders and all of that. At that moment, there were so many chief leaders and all of people who he wanted to ensure that they become Muslims. But over there, right, like I mentioned about how Risalat is Prophet's guidance, right? You learn from the Quran and all of that, but you can never really understand something until Allah gives you the hidayat, right? So over here, we learn something really important, okay? Because over here, Abasa wa Tawalla, which means all of you in that page, all of you with me. Can I get a raise of hands who are with me? Okay, wait. I will give you all like a 5-minute break, okay? Before I move on to this in detail. We can time is it? 8:58. You can come back at 9:03. Okay, is everyone here? I should start with Surah Abbas. And like how I mentioned, yeah, so Abasa wa tawalla means he frowned. Okay? He frowned, and at this point is when what frown means is not just being like mad about something. It means over here, it means the fact that Prophet turned away from from a person who asked for guidance. So somebody when somebody comes to you asking for something, the most responsive thing is to answer them. But Prophet wanted him to wait a little bit. So he said like he knows he's a blind man and he wants guidance, but he at that point um he thought that he needed to get the support of these chief leaders who were non-Muslim. Like he was trying to preach to the Quraysh chiefs, right? So he frowned and turned away. Okay, that's Abasa is he frowned, and watawalla wa is and tawalla means turned away. So you need to learn it breaking into like words, word by word, so that you ensure that you haven't missed anything. Okay. So the ones who learn Arabic literature should be knowing that ja'a means came. Okay. So anja'ahul is because there came to him al-a'ma. So you should be knowing what means. Means blind man. So like when Prophet was preaching to some non-believers, there came to him a blind man. Okay, this is the blind man. The blind man, his name is Abdullah bin Ummi Makhtoum. Okay, bin Makhtoum. So when he came asking for guidance, Prophet turned away. That's Abasa wa Tawalla. He frowned and turned away. Uh, Anjahul A'ma, which means because there came to him a blind man. So if you know from like other surahs, there are many surahs which have like, if you have heard Summun Bukmun Umyun, which means is blind, Sum, yeah, deaf, dumb, and blind. Okay, so that is this word Umyun is the root word, and this is A'ma, which is a blind man. Anjahul A'ma. وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ لَعَلَّهُ يَزَّكَّى. And they're asking, this is a question, okay? How do you know that he might become pure from sins? How do you know that people who you're trying to, um, who is trying to get from you, how do you know that they can become pure from sins? Or they might receive admonition. Okay, you should use the same terms which is in the translation itself, because then you have like a proper way of like, they know that you've practiced it and all of that. You need to look and sound that you have learned, but not too much, because for subject like English you should ensure that you don't use much fancy words, and because it's O level, sometimes if they don't understand the word they might put it as wrong. Okay, so you should just ensure that it's simple as possible, but also that it makes sense. Okay, so wama yudrika la'allahu yazakka, which means, and how can you know that he might be pure from sins, or that he might receive, or that he might receive admonition, and that admonition might profit him. How do you know that they might become, they might guide themselves, and that guidance can profit them? And then there is this one part. This is for the blind man, right? Amma man istaghna, which means, and that's for him who thinks himself as self-sufficient. Obviously, it's a character trait of a disbeliever for them to think themselves as self-sufficient. Who is all self-sufficient? Yes, Allah is all self-sufficient, right? So people cannot be self-sufficient. You cannot um get things by yourself and do things solely. So what Allah mentions in the Quran is how, as for those who think themselves as self-sufficient, to them you attend, to them you don't turn your face away, to them you try to guide them. Okay? Which is فَأَنْتَ لَهُ تَصَدَّى. To them, to him you attend. وَمَا عَلَيْكَ أَلَّا يَزَّكَّى. Then there's another question. What does it matter to you if he will become pure from disbelief? Okay. So when how, like, how people, his duty, Prophet's duty over here is to guide people, is to just, he's supposed to do risalat. But the guidance, the actual guidance that Allah puts into people's hearts, that is hidayat. Because sometimes when you try, if you have non-Muslim friends and all of that, if you're trying to like tell them something about Islam, sometimes they won't understand what you're trying to say. That is because Allah hasn't opened their hearts as much as He has opened it for you. So you need to understand that hidayat is different from risalat. So even people will guide themselves through this Holy Quran and Sunnah, but guidance is solely from Allah. Okay? Okay, so that's a question. Do we need to write the exact same translation that is in the hadith, surah, and stories? Can't we write it using our own words? You can write for stories and for hadith also, but it needs to be somewhat similar. Surah, you have to use the correct translation. Hadith, it has to, you don't have to use the, like, some certain words are really difficult to use. You can get in the simpler forms, but you can't for surah, because surah, there are certain, like for every word, there is like, for even wa or even for au, it has to be exact. And I know this might be a little bit scary, but then Arabic literature is an amazing subject. So when you start learning exactly with the story over here, you can um you can get it like simply through that story. You can learn word by word, like abasa, which means he frowned, watawalla, this is a small summary again, and turned away, anja'ahul, when there came, because there came to him a blind man, al-ama, wama yudrika la'allahu yazzaka, wama, okay, there's an and here, were, and how can you know, yudrika, that is, how can you know that, yeah, yazzaka means pure from sins. So that you have to form the sentence, but you should know the translation, because obviously you can't be a dictionary here, but you need to know the sentence. So just learn each verse, like each ayah, you learn it. Like Abasa wa Tawalla means he found and turned away, and Jahul Ama means because there came to him the blind man. And then the next one is Wama Yudrika la'allahu yazzakka, which means, and how can you know that he might be pure from sins? أو يذكر فتنفعه الذكرى, which means, and or he might receive admonition. أو, or يذكر, that is again pure, but then you know how you form the sentence and it becomes, or he might receive admonition and the admonition might profit him. Okay. Amma man istaghna, which means to him you attend. What does it matter to you if he will become pure from disbelief? That is wama. Wait, sorry. فأنت له تصدى, to him you attend. وأما من وما عليك ألا يزكى, which means as for him who thinks himself as self-sufficient. صدى. فأنت له تصدى, to him you attend. وما عليك يزكى, what does it matter to you if he will become pure? So wama, ma means what? That's a question. So you should know that it's a question, and you learn it in a way that you know what exactly each line is saying. Okay. وَأَمَّا مَنْ جَاءَكَ يَسْعَى, which means جاء over here means coming. Like I mentioned over here, جاء over here in English is came, because they came to you, because they came to him, the blind man. وَأَمَّا مَنْ جَاءَكَ, جَاءَ means come, came, that. You need the English translation, you need to form it up. So وَأَمَّا مَنْ جَاءَكَ يَسْعَى, which means, what does it matter? Sorry, which means, but as to him who came to you running. Okay? So you need to form it up, but it's better if you know the entire line in English so that you can just fit it when you wherever it's necessary. Like, wherever you think it is proper. And you need to learn it properly, because if not, you might change a few meanings. So you should learn exactly where it fits. Okay? وهو يخشى, which means and is afraid of Allah. So basically, they're mentioning about Abdullah bin Maktoum. He's afraid of Allah, which is why he's Muslim, and he has the fear of God, which is taqwa. وَهُوَ يَخْشَى, which means and is afraid of Allah. Somebody who has taqwa. Of him you are neglectful and divert your attention to another. Of him, فَأَنْتَ, that is you are, but then just like I mentioned, you need to fit it. Of him you are neglectful and divert your attention to another. Anhu talaha, that is neglectful. So you need to form it up. Just like I said, the exact meaning you can't get. You need to learn the entire word's meaning. So like not each words, but the entire verse. For example, he frowned and turned away because there came to him a blind man, like that. And you fit it in, okay? With the words you learn, like wa is and, وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ لَعَلَّهُ يَزَّكَّى. And how can you know that he might be become pure from sins? Okay, this is the background story. So what is background revelation? Like background of revelation, what does it mean? Sorry, the Arabic term for it. Does anybody know? Yes, Asbabun Nuzul. Okay, so that's there in the beginning of the book, but it's not that important to know exactly what it means. Just means background of revelation. So that is about it for Surah Abbas. You have to learn only the first 10 verses, right? A lot of you were like concerned about Surah Abbas, Surah Isra and Surah Ma'arij. So I'll be doing that. And then, yeah, now we'll move on to Surah Isra. Okay. So I think when you get surahs, they don't mention which surah it is. So you'll have to like figure it out. And when you have words meaning, sometimes you have this in the beginning of like in part 1, you'll have this words meaning where they give you like English words. And for O-level papers, they give you in other languages as well, like, English, Sinhala, and Tamil, all three. And you'll have to get the Arabic word, and that might be a little difficult. Initially, that was difficult for me, even in O-levels. But I read all the words, like, I know Sinhala a little bit, so I read Sinhala and English, and that made it more, like, there was more sense to it. That's somewhat I figured the word out. Like, you need to know all surahs, like the words meaning, so it's much easier for you. And like the verses. So that's, if you know some surahs already, move on to the other surahs that are, much easier. And when you start learning, it's just so much nicer. Like you want to learn more because you're learning about the Quran. And like I mentioned earlier, you have the good intention, right? Yeah. So, Surah Isra. Bismillah. So in the beginning, they start with a long verse. Can you see this? وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, which means, so I like this verse a lot. Okay, I like this surah as well. It's so pretty because it's about the parents and how you should be dutiful to them, right? So the beginning, it has a wa. So what does wa mean? Like I mentioned earlier. Can I drop a message in the chat box? And very good. So wa qada rabbuka alla ta'budu. So it mentions Rabbuka. Does anybody know what Rabbuka means? I'm just going to decode this for you so you know how easy it is. Okay, so I want you all to repeat, like, answer any question that. Yeah, it means your Lord. Rabbuka. Rabbu, Rabb means Lord. Rabbuka is your Lord. So this is how important it is to not miss a single letter, right? So waqada rabbuka, which means and your Lord. And that's why I said you should learn the English one more fluently. That way you are more like you have more likeliness to get it right. And since you know the English verse, like when you start with it, you know waqada rabbuka, it means and your Lord, like has decreed. So you know the rest of it because you know the English meaning of the entire verse. You studied it like that. If you study word by word also, it'll be great. But then for those of you who don't have time, I suggest to learn the verse by verse. Okay? And your Lord has decreed is وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ and your Lord has decreed Allah ta'budu. Does anybody know what ta'budu means? Okay, break it down to ibadah. Ta'budu, ibadah. What does it mean, ibadah? Worship. Well done. Yes. And your Lord has decreed that you worship. This is so important for you to know that each verse, right? Each word. So Allah ta'budu is over here. Sorry, illa. Illa, sorry. Illa and Allah, they have its differences in meaning, okay? Except and none. So your Lord has decreed. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ and your Lord has decreed that you worship none but Him. Right? None and but is there. So but also means like except. So and your Lord has decreed that you worship none except Him. Okay? إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Moving on to this. This is also so what does wa mean again? And so and your Lord has decreed that you worship none but Him, and that you be. So but Him over here is Yahu. So what does who mean? Arabic language students should be knowing this. Him, correct. So we learned this meaning, right? وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ. So إِيَّاهُ. And your Lord has decreed that you worship none but Him. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. So wa means and. Walidain. What is walidain? Parents. And that you be dutiful. So ihsana means good. Okay. So you do good for your parents is also over here to be dutiful. Okay. Walidaini is both your parents. So dain is both. Walid, if the the Arabic language students will be knowing this about walid and walidain, the plural and singular. So the first line, what it means is وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. That's how you should learn exactly. That was just me depicting how you all should be learning each verse by verse, so that you understand and you move forward. But you should never try to like learn the exact meaning. You should understand it. If you don't understand it, then you are not going to get it in some places. Okay? Imma yablughanna indakal kibra. So imma, what does imma mean? Does anybody know what imma means? Yes. If. So if, so they're saying if one of them, imma yablughanna indakal kibra ahaduhuma wa aw kilahuma. This verse. Ahaduhuma, what does ahad mean? If you all should know like wahid, ithnan, like that. A deviation is ahad. one, yes. If one of them or أو, I told you what أو means, right? If one of them or both of them. So in that, the second, it's the same verse, but then it's been like, the it's been split into different things. إما يبلغن عندك الكبر. What does عند mean? Yes, عند means have. عندك is, that's when you put it together. That's what I mentioned about putting it together. How if one of them or both of them attain old age, okay? يبلغن عندك الكبر. Kibr is old age. So if one of them or both of them attain old age in your life, so you have to أو كلاهما فلا تقل لهما. Okay, wait. There's it. يبلغن عندك الكبر وأحدهما أو كلاهما. So let me فلا تقل لهما. Okay, kul means what? You all should be knowing from Surah Ikhlas and um Nas and Falaq about kul. What does kul mean? Yes, say. If if one of them or both of them attain old age in your life, you should not say not to them a word of disrespect. فلا تقل لهما. To them is lahuma, okay? فلا تقل لهما. Say not to them. Uffu. So uff is not even a word, like it doesn't have an exact, it does not mean, it literally means the word uff, okay? This word cannot even be said. It's not only oof, it's also when you just, when your parents say something and you just go like, you click your tongue like, or something like that. That is also a form of saying oof, okay? That's what it means over there is a word of disrespect. Word of disrespect, okay? فلا تنهرهما. What does تنهرهما mean? It's so you can break it down to tanhar and huma. أف ولا, okay. وقل لهما قولا كريما, which means say not to them. So over here, فلا تقل لهما أف ولا تنهرهما وقل لهما وقل لهما قولا كريما, which means if one of them or both of them attain old age in your life, say not to them a word of disrespect, nor shout at them, but address them in terms of honor. So over here, قولا كريما means word, قولا, like how we learn قل, like that. A deviation is, sorry, from the root word, they make it قولا, which means word. قولا كريما, a word of disrespect. واخفض لهما. واخفض means lower unto them, okay? Lower unto them. Janah is the wing, okay? Wait, Janah. Dhilla is the wing. Janah is the is submission, okay? Wing of submission. And lower unto them the wing of submission. واخفض لهما جناح الذل من رحمة, which means من الرحمة, meaning of mercy, okay? Of mercy. You know what rahma means, right? Like Ar-Rahman Rahim, merciful and gracious. وَقُلْ رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. This is a dua which you should say in your like daily life for your parents. And say. So Allah encourages us to say and say. He says, say رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا, which like it's is a dua which we learn from when we were kids, right? So we should learn the meaning of it, which means say that my Lord, bestow on them your mercy as they did bring me up when I was small. Uh, Again, Rahma over here. Bestow on them your mercy. Kul Rabbi, O Lord, my Lord, bestow on them your mercy as they did bring me up when I was small. Saghira means small. You all know that, right? Okay, again, Rabbukum, your Lord. Okay, knows best. Alam, ilm, alim, alim, all it comes from this. Rabbukum, your Lord knows best what is in your inner self. Nufusikum comes from nafs. Rabbukum alamu bima fi nufusikum. Your Lord knows best what is in your inner selves. In takunu salihin. So, if you are righteous, in takunu, if you are righteous, فَإِنَّهُ كَانَ لِلْأَوَّابِينَ غَفُورًا, which means he is the ever most forgiving to those who turn unto him again and again in obedience. فَإِنَّهُ كَانَ لِلْأَوَّابِينَ غَفُورًا. Do you all know what غَفُور means? What does غَفُور mean? It's forgiving, yes. So Ghafura is basically how it's a trait of Allah to forgive everybody, right? If you are righteous, Salihin, he's ever most forgiving to those who turn unto him. Awabina is what is turning, like when you make a mistake, you repent over and over again. So that's basically what it means. He's ever most forgiving to those who turn unto him again and again in obedience and in repentance. Okay, the English translation thing over here is the English translation can never match the richness in Arabic, because Arabic is such it's so rich that even English can't translate exactly what it means, because you would have seen, like, when you read Allah's 99 names also, there's a lot of similar words, but then the deep meaning you can only understand it if you understand proper Arabic. Okay, so Ghafura means forgiving, and Awabin is like those who turn unto in repentance. But there's so much of difference, because Ghafur in itself, it's like how Allah is so forgiving if anybody turns unto him in repentance. Okay, I'd just like to tell you all a tiny story about how everybody knows this, right? When Adam alayhi salam was given his soul and all of that, Allah asked the angels, he commanded them to bow down. Now, obviously, we are not allowed to bow down to other people, right? But when Allah commanded them to bow down to Adam alayhi salam, with no hesitation, they should bow down, right? But Iblis, as we know, who's shaitan now, but Iblis is the main jinn, right? He was from the jinn, and he was like, I am made of fire, right? So why should I bow down to someone made from clay? It doesn't really matter, okay? His arrogance over there, that he is better, that arrogance is of shaitan, right? Somebody thinks that they are better than another person. It's just like how shaitan just compared himself with Adam alayhi salam and said he's better. And just that arrogance of shaitan just disobeyed Allah, okay, his command. And that's when basically that disobeyingness of shaitan is what Allah made, banished him and everything. So that story, everybody knows that just like that. But what happened afterwards? Shaitan, he asks Allah for a second chance. He looks for a second chance. He's like, Allah, I will go to hell, but then you have to allow me to take your followers to hell with me. So then Allah mentions that my followers who follow who follow me and the prophets and are guided correctly, the righteous ones, they will not follow you, right? So that's Shaitan's mission is literally to get us into hell and to take him with like take us with him, even even though we know that it's um he exists around us. It's a natural thing to like sometimes do something wrong, but he makes us think that it's so wrong that Allah won't forgive us. That's what we should know, that Allah is the most forgiving. That's why he mentions here, if you're righteous, even if you do a mistake and you are repenting because of that, Allah, he is most forgiving for those who are righteous, and even if you turn unto him again and again and again. Okay, that's what we should understand from this verse. وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ, which means, and give to the kingsman, okay, ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ, his due, okay? And then you have الْمَسَاكِينَ وَابْنَ السَّبِيلِ وَلَا تُبَذِّرْ تَبْذِيرًا, which is, you know what miskin is, the needy. وَابْنَ السَّبِيلِ is somebody who travels in the way of Allah, okay? So that's a wayfarer. And وَلَا تُبَذِّرْ تَبْذِيرًا, and do not spend in the manner of spendthrifts. So we should keep that in mind, okay? This about spending, overspending. So many people, when they have money, they like to spend it and overspend. Like, for even if you have money for like once, it's fine to spend it. But if you have so much of money, you keep spending it, maybe not in the cause of Allah, maybe in the cause of Allah is fine. In the cause of Allah is fine. But when you're spending not in the cause of Allah, you're just overspending. You're buying too many things. You don't even need those things. You're just buying and buying and buying. That is spending in the manner of a spendthrift. And that over there is something we're going to learn from the next slide. إن المبذرين كانوا إخوان الشياطين. Basically, those who spend in المبذرين, indeed, those spendthrifts are the brothers. كانوا إخوانا. إخوان is the plural of أخي, right? إخوان الشياطين are the brothers of shaitan. وكان الشيطان لربه كفورا. وكان, and the shaitan is ever ungrateful to his Lord. So those who are not grateful, if you don't say Alhamdulillah, those are so certain things that you should learn, like to be grateful and all of that is the attribute of somebody who is opposite shaitan. You have to be though you should be of those who are grateful, like as Allah mentions um in the Quran. He mentions that if you are grateful, I will give you more. So that is something we should learn from this surah. And there are also background for the revelation and all of that, right? So this surah was revealed immediately after Mi'raj. Okay? No, it was revealed after Mi'raj. And so basically, when you learn from all surahs, like we learned Abasa wa Tawalla and all of that, um, there are certain teachings that you should learn. So all those teachings are basically what I explain to you. You just need to form it into like how I mentioned, we should be grateful. That is a teaching. Okay, then that we should not be extravagant in our wealth. So that is tubadhir spending. We should not spend too much. So each surah, when you understand the meaning, it's easier to write the teachings of the surah. Can you give me another teaching of this surah? What did you learn from this surah? What deeply touched you? You shouldn't repeat what I said though. To be obedient to our parents is a really good one. Like I mentioned in the first part of it. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Yes. And you should give to the relatives, the poor, the travelers. You should give them um things, their rights, even not to hurt your parents, not to say oof. And you can just exaggerate everything that you learn from this, and everything that you write, that you learn from this, it is all considered under teachings. Moving on to literary nuance, which is basically what you learn from the way it sounds, like it's the sounds is like sound nuance, but then what the verse, the richness of the verse is basically what literary nuance means. So in this we learn how there's huma at the end of certain things. Like for example, um here there's this قل لهما فلا تقل لهما أف ولا تنهرهما وقل لهما. So these things are like a rhyming, right? Karima, and then at the end of this صغيرة, and then غفورة, and then تبذيرة, and then kafura. They're all sound ones. And ihsana. Those certain things, okay, I have to do that in different color. Ihsana, karima, صغيرة, غفورة, تبذير, تبذيرا, kafura. Okay, those are certain things that you had learned. And then yeah. Okay, I will move to rules of tajweed because we'll have to learn that as well. How many of you are familiar with the Noon Sakin Tanween? There's like a really easy way to learn this. Okay, one, two people. That's a little. But I will go through it again because it's so easy and you need to learn it in a way that you will never forget it. Okay? So this is how I learn it, and I will I'm pretty sure if you learn it this way, you will remember it for life. So Noon Sakin, there are four Noon Sakin and Tanween that rule. There are four rules that apply when you find Noon Sakin or Tanween. Okay, and we will do this activity also. Why can't Yeah. So Noon Sakin is this basically when Noon is with a sukun, right? And then Tanween is Fathatain, Kasratain, and Dhammatain, right? After any of this, Noon Sakin or Tanween, if the letter, so this is how this table it should be there in your book. If the letters Ya, Ra, Mim, Lam, and Waw and Noon, Yarmaluna, okay? If they appear, then what happens? You have to merge, okay? You have to merge that, and you have to so there are bil gunna and bila gunna. Bila gunna means for the letters that you don't do gunna. What's gunna? Can somebody just give me like a tiny overview on gunna? In the exam, there was a question. In the exam, um you don't have to write in a para form for teachings. You can just give points, okay? For the amount of marks there is, you just give points for. Okay, points should be fine. I asked a question. What does gunna mean? Yes, so basically, drag in it, like, of after noon sakina tanween, if ya comes, like, I will take a surah for example, so that it's much clearer for you. So I will, yeah, okay. See, this is surah wait, let me take a surah we didn't do. Over here, you can see fa'andir, right? After noon sakin, what's the letter that's there? Dal, right? So in the rules, dal, it belongs to these 15 letters. That's ikhfa, okay? But for idgham, after nun sakina tanween, if ya, mim, waw, or noon appear, then with gunna you need to merge it. So like if like the imma yablughanna عندك الكبر in, give me a minute. I was finding for an example for yeah. So that, do you all have an example for idhar, sorry, idgham? So an example that I found was mu waqi. Okay? So after like, let me draw it. Oops. Mim, noon, after noon sakin, mu waqi. So there's a wow. And over here, wow, what happens? Bil gunna, with gunna, mu waqi. Okay? And another one is without gunna is mir rabbik. So mim, noon, min, and then there's ra. So over here, raw, you don't drag it. You don't say mu work, like so mu working is mu working. But for this you say mirrabbik. You don't say mirrabbik. Okay? That's a rule. And you probably already know how to recite, right? But the rules, if they're confusing, just do it in this table form. Okay, idgham, there's bilgunna, bilagunna, and then the words is yarmaluna. So they never learn ikhfa. And that's something that I would say is like never learn all the letters of ikhfa because there are 15 letters. So you learn what idhar is. Idhar is clear. So can you see how it tries to make itself clear even by the word idhar? So over there you don't use gunna. So see the letters over there. Hamza ha, ain ha, and ghain kha. So for those letters, you don't use gunna. Like for example, um, in hada would be in and her the, right? So ha over here is a letter from idha. This letter you need to make it clear. See, in hada, the exact letter pronunciation, ha, or in huwa, okay? Or another example would be minhum. See, min whom. You need to make the ha clear. Or even if it's another word like an'amta. So in Surah Fatiha, you have an'amta, right? After noon sakin, an, there's ayn, amta, right? Over there, even the ayn has to be clear. Just like that, that's idhar, trying to make itself clear. Iqlab means the ba, it changes into a meme. Okay? You should keep that in mind. The ba changes into meme. So one thing I learned, make sure to this is how it, like, I keep in mind, okay? Iqlab ends with a ba, right? So then, iqlab ba. So the letter is over here, ba. And ikhfa is the 15 letters. That is rest. Idhar is the clear letters, hamza, ha, ain, ha, ghain, kha. And idgham yarmaluna. Okay? So the iqlab is when there's a ba, like mim ba'di. After mim, after min, there's a ba. It becomes mim ba'di, like literally M-I-M, mim ba'di. That's how you pronounce it, but it's written as min ba'di. Then we have ikhfa, which is it hides, basically trying to hide. So for example, min and a letter of an ikhfa letter would be jim. Or give me an example, ikhfa letter that you know. Okay, ta. So yeah, ta would be like, if you are doing jannati tajri. So do you see how it vanishes? The word partially vanishes. Like even for the example which I was giving, mi ju'in. It's min and then ju'in. So mi ju'in. Just like that, jannati tajri. Okay? And another one is kuntum. فأنت, yes, فأنت له تصدى, like that, just like that. That's ikhfa, trying to cover itself up. Then we have meme, sakin, and tanween, which has three rules. That should be simpler, right? So over here, idgham, like I mentioned, iqlab is ba. Okay, meme sakin does not have iqlab, so you should know that if meme sakin does not have iqlab, it should be easier, right? Because iqlab ba and idgham meme. Okay, this is how I make sure to keep it in my mind. Ikhfa has ba. So meme sakin letters are meme and ba, and the 26 other letters are under idhar. Everything else should be clear. So for if any word like say and another word like um yeah, for idgham, if there's a meme after the letter, like for example, alaykum midrara. Alaykum, it ends with meme. Alaykum midrara. So that over there, it has to change again. Like how I said, ikhfa changes, right? This ikhfa, it's hiding, and this uh, iqlab changes. Over here, idgham changes. Alaykum midrara. So you just make it, you try to change the word. Alaykum midrara. Like that. Ikhfa, the ba, it hides. Like how ikhfa does. Ikhfa itself means hiding. Okay. So you hide it and it happens with gunna. So ikhfa over here, the example I could give is yuhasibukum bihi. Yuhasibukum bihi. Okay? The word bihi, it does not, you shouldn't make it clear. Yuhasibukum bihi. Like that. Okay? And then idhar offers, it's clear, like bihamdi. So after meme, it's dal. Bihamdi. So you make the word clear. So things to remember again from this page is the iqlab ba and the idgham meme And meme sakin has only meme and ba. Okay, should remember that's simple. So the meme belongs to idgham because idgham ends with ma and me. Ikhfa ba. Iqlab ends with ba, so it's ba. And over here you should learn the idgham letters and the idgham letters. So it's so easy because you know the idgham letters in itself, right? Moving on to noon and meme shadda. This is the simplest part, which is like noon and meme with shadda. So noon with shadda is noon mushaddad and meme with shadda is meme mushaddad, which means yeah, you have to say it with the ghunna. Both you have to say it with the ghunna. So you know how to pronounce these and all, right? Inna Allah, walakin, and then mukarrama. Okay, mukarrama. And yeah. So we're going to do, there were two hadiths which I selected. We're out of time, but if that's okay with you, I can continue. Is that fine with the hadith? We can end with the hadith. Right. Okay. So this is the first hadith that you'll learn, which is speech that conveys other than the intended meaning, right? Basically, when you try to tell something to somebody else, sometimes you have the urge to lie because you don't want any trouble, but you happen to lie to them. So this is a hadith. You don't have to know this part. It's mostly they give only the hadith. It says kaburat khiyanatan. So it is a great treasury. Okay, treasury is treachery. Okay, it's spelled like this. Treachery, which means um treason. Okay, it's a betrayal to say something to your brother in an تحدث, to say something. Tahaddath is also like hadith, saying something. Okay, to say something to your brother. Akhaq, like I mentioned, ikhwat, akhaq, to your brother. Hadithan, hadithan again, something. It is a great treasury to say something to your brother that he believes. Huwa laka bihi musaddiqan. Okay, he believes it's the truth. Okay, musaddiqan, sadiq, and it's the truth. He believes it's the truth, right? It is great treachery to say something to your brother that he believes. Wa anta lahu bihi kadhib. When you are actually lying to him. So when you're actually lying to somebody, you tell, he believes that is a great betrayal. Okay, and that is something that is completely prohibited. It's a hadith of the Prophet, right? He has mentioned that you don't lie to somebody because it is a treason. So whatever you learn from this, also when they ask in literary nuance and sorry, not literary nuance, but when they ask as a lesson from um from the hadith, that's what you should mention. Like you shouldn't lie to your brother. That's simple as that, right? And then the next one is this one is one of my favorite hadith. So again, mathalul qiyam ala hududillah. So okay, what did I say about mathal? What does mathal mean? For those of you who are listening, you all should be knowing what mathal means. Yes, example. Very good. Masal means example and mathalul qa'im. What is, okay, just try to form it up. Qa'im. What does it mean? Yes, that's correct. A person who abides, okay? Somebody who abides. Example of the person who abides hududillah. Hududillah you should be knowing it means um simple as Allah's orders, okay? Like masalul qiyam ala hududillah wal baqi fiha, okay? And restrictions. Waqi is restrictions. In comparison, kamathal, in comparison to the example of a person who violates them. Qawmin istahamu. You should learn these word meaning, then only you can like quickly form it up. But if you learn like how I mentioned the verse by verse, it's much easier. If you um are not a next month O level student, that's a faster way to do it is by the verse by verse, as I mentioned earlier. Ala safina. Safina means boat or ship. Okay. Is a in comparison is an example to a person um who they in a ship they draw lots. Okay. So they're drawing lots. Who is going to stay on top of the ship and who is going to stay bottom? So there's like two compartments of a ship, right? So people who drew lots from the up, some of them, they obviously when they drew the lots in the ship, some of them got seats up, some of them got seats down. When they wanted to get water, okay, because it's a trouble to go all the way from down to up and get water from there, what they did was they dug a hole. What happens when you break a hole into the ship? Yes, it sinks. The entire ship sinks. Okay, so it'll drown. So all the people who are in the ship, they will drown. So what we should make sure to do is how eh, to prevent this. What they should do is both. So the upper people, they should be prevented, like to prevent this from happening. This hadith mentions that those who drew lots for the seats in a ship, some of them got the seats in the upper part and the others got in the lower. When the latter down part needed water, they had to go up to bring water, and that troubled the others. So they said, let us make a hole in the ship and get water so that others don't get troubled. But what happens? Everybody in the ship perishes. So over there, if the people in the upper part had left others to do what they intended, so basically not minding into other people's, like to allow them to do what they wanted, nobody would have been perished, right? That's the meaning of this hadith. And then yeah, that is with the hadith, two hadiths. And then this one is the example of a believer, okay, who loves and so over here, masalul mu'minin basically means the example of the righteous, okay, the one who believes in the mutual mercy, compassion, and love. Rahma is mercy. Tawad is um compassion, and support is the example of the one who So yeah, but like I was saying, the one who the liveliness of the believers, the example of the believers in their mutual love, mercy, and compassion is that when one part of a body is in pain. So, for example, if you're having fever or something, not fever, if you're having a hand pain, like your hand fractured or anything like that, the rest of your body starts hurting. Like you can't do anything, and the rest of your body it joins it in. Like you feel sleepy all the time, and sleep, and you feel like you can't do anything. That is basically the meaning of this. So when, for example, even the Palestine situation, a part of the Ummah is hurting, the rest of the Ummah, how they have come together, because one part hurts, the rest of the hurts as well. That is what mutual mercy, compassion, and support of the believers mean. Mathalul Mu'minina, the likeness of a believer in their mutual love, compassion, and mercy is just like a body, just said, either idhashtaka minhu udwan, which means if one part of it is in pain, minhu, in part of it is in pain, the rest of it will join it in sleeplessness. Rest of the body, jasad, will join it in sleeplessness and fever, restlessness and fever. Okay, that is with the that is with the hadith poems. It's I've given it in the book as English, right? You need to learn words meaning, and for that it's so simple. You just need to learn the different. I've given all the poems in your syllabus, so you just need to like write it down, like write and learn your the Arabic poem, because that's how it comes in your thing as well. And proverbs is also the same thing, of like how so can you see this? Yeah. So these poems, you should learn it by writing each one, then you will keep it in mind, right? And then yeah, the proverbs as well, the Arabic proverbs, you can just, it's so simple to learn one by one, just like that. And then yeah, we have Arabic Tamil literature. I am not fluent with Tamil, but Arabic Tamil is so simple. You just have to learn these Talay Fatiha, Rasul Malay, Nur Malay, Mirza Malay, and Munajat Malay. Okay, just learn. There's an English part of it, right? You can write it down beside this and practice, because when it comes, it's going to come from this as well. It's just going to come only from this. You don't have to learn specifically into that. And in your model papers in Arabic literature, there's this one question at the end which comes like short answers and all of that. I suggest you don't do that question, because most of the time you can score, but it's best to not choose this, because when you choose um this question, like I was told when I was in school also not to choose that, and I feel like it's such a valid thing, because when you choose this question, it's going to put you in a little bit of trouble, because you have to write short notes in Arabic, okay? Which is something, it's so, if you're an Arabic language student, you learn much. But then for an Arabic literature student, I would say not to choose the end, like the last question, like when you have to select questions, okay? And then you have to explain poems and all of that. And yeah, these are sayings that it was there in one of the papers, and I think it's such a thing you should properly learn, because it's sometimes there, sometimes not there. So over here, Kuli ayyuhal kafirun la'abudu ma ta'budun. And they ask, explain who uttered the following and the literary nuance of the following. So these sayings you should know exactly where it's from. So this is Surah Kafirun, right? Who says, "Oh, you who disbelieve"? That's a statement from the Quran, and Allah says it, right? So you should make sure you know exactly where you say it, where it's from. And the literary nuance over here, I think they're referring to the. I got this from a model paper. You need to refer to like its background. So basically, how the disbelievers were, the kafirs were not, um, they were not accepting Islam, and nor were they allowing Prophet to preach his religion, right? So they were calling him to the other religion. They were calling him to the other religions, and that's when he ends the surah with "Lakum dinukum waliyadin," which means for you be your religion and to me be mine. So that is, you should know exactly where the literary nuance and everything comes from. Even Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, you know that surah Alaq, and how you know the background of its revelation, right? And then Rabbana lakal hamd. So do you know what Rabbana lakal hamd mean? My our Lord, you deserve praise, right? That's something you say in prayer. So all of these facts, it's there in the book. If you want, you can take a screenshot if you don't have the tute, or it's there in like the tute has been sent in the group, right? You can refer to that because this is an important question. I think you all should try it out and just let me know if you have any issues. I am feel free to contact me if you need anything. And then the underlined words. This is a question that will for sure be there. Like Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. You know which surah it's from, Surah Fatiha. And Surah Fatiha is not in the books that you have, right? In the textbook, you don't have that. But you should know it. Like if you know the surah, you know that Iyyaka na'budu, it means you alone be worshipped, right? So you need to, this is one thing, it doesn't come like this, okay? It doesn't come in this whole uh format. It just comes with that word. So you need to figure out from which surah it is. Like it just comes as Iyyaka na'budu. Astaghfirullah. Astaghfirullah means oh Allah forgive us, right? And then khairun min alfi shahr. This is from surah um Surah Qadr, Laylatul Qadr, right? So you should learn khairun min alfi shahr means better than 10,000 months. So each of it you learn, you write it. I would prefer if you all can send me like once you're done, you can just send me a picture and I can mark it for you if you want. And I also have a small um it's a form that you can fill, like just a small thing from what you understood today. I can share it to you all at the end. If you want, you can do it and submit it. I will share the link in the group if that's okay. And here, the literary value of these statements are basically like the rules that we learned. You need to like implement it and find like noon sakin rules, tanween rules, and all of that. And there are so many other rules in the tute that I've added. And then the poem, it comes like this. So you'll have to learn the Arabic and you have to write the Arabic in the tute. So you can write the Arabic on top of the wording as well. Like um I will it's there, like the English is there. You can ensure that you write the Arabic, like word by word Arabic. So these are also Makki and Madani surahs are also there in the Quran, right? There are 28 Madani surahs. Wait, yeah, and 86 Makki surahs. So you should just learn the differences of each and like how it is. And simple as that. It's like um these are like general knowledge questions. You just like come randomly. Can you guess and like try to match it? What does Tamim Ansari Kissa? What is it? Is it a poem, law, or does it relate to law, or is it a history, or is it a religious speech? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So Tamim Ansari Kissa means story, right? And story is also related to history. So basically, the old stories are history, right? Khutbah ibn Nabata. Khutbah again, what does it mean? We studied this in the beginning, contents of Jahiliyyah. Yes, speech. Yes. So, Ahkamul Muslimin. If you don't know what this means, like Ahkamul Muslimin or Nasuhad Nama, Nama means poetry, so that's it comes here. Okay, you have to break it down. You have to somehow find this, like it's uh general knowledge. And Ahkamul Muslimin, you know, Muslim is like the a person who submits himself to Islam, right? So over there, you can somehow try to relate everything and figure it out because it'll be so odd. Sometimes Arabic literature, so basically for the students who do it in English, this is how the papers come. And for even for the others, I think it's like this. I did in English, so I know it was like this. Yeah. So there's more. You can try these out and you can send me. Yeah, that's it. Jazakallah khair for joining everyone. You can let me know. Send me like feedbacks on today's session and if I have anything to improve, inshallah, for the future. Can we see this? No. Right.